address me so that you're not doing, because what we want to avoid at all costs is, because it's Horslips and it's a box set, we want to avoid like a 2.5 hour lecture.
Yes.
In 5, 4, 3.
So, Cormac.
Yes, Colin.
We're here at your salubrious premises, Redbox Studio.
Deep in the bowels of Redbox Studio, Colin, where you have been many times.
Yeah, and I've sometimes even paid you for the privilege. And sometimes I've been ejected onto the street from these premises.
Yes.
But yes, you've invited me here today for, if I understand it correctly, a 2.5 hour talk about the current Horslips box set, which I curated and you mastered.
Yes, it's the end of actually the end of one of the projects, Colin. I'm pleased to say that you brought in. Anyway, over the last, I don't know, it's been a while now. But we over the last while we've been working together on a long-term project, which is this.
More than you can hold.
Amazing, the Horslips, and it's the box set. So, Colin, perhaps you'll tell us a bit about this. Tell people who are watching.
Well, it all started maybe 3 years ago, possibly, when Ian Crockett at Madfish Records, a division of Snapper, rang me up. A tsunami of positive energy, as I understood then and have understood only too well ever since. Ian rang me up to talk about a Wishbone Ash project, which, funnily enough, is still yet to happen, a Wishbone Ash BBC box set, but it will happen at some point. But during that phone call, we got talking about Horslips. He had actually seen them in 1978 at Wembley Arena with Thin Lizzy, and within a few days of that phone call, somehow he or I had convinced Snapper that this was a good thing to do, a Horslips box set, and it helps very much that the band members themselves own their own catalogue.
And they're
also
great guys, and easy
that's
to work
the
with.
second thing, and that they're great guys and
yeah.
easy to work with. And you know, I don't think, I mean, there's nothing secret in the fact that Wishbone Ash have had a storied history that has involved court cases about the use of the name and stuff. So there are challenges that third-party record labels sometimes have to get over. With any act of any vintage, there will be issues that need addressing before business arrangements can be made. But with Horslips, there was none of that.
And actually,
it was very easy.
unusually with Horslips, and any of the work that I do, remastering or mastering, I very, very rarely get to meet the clients. What's important is for me to be able to sit in a room and analyse material and do all kinds of things to it or whatever. But on this occasion, this was a very different project, and they actually came to the studio, which was a great day for us. We went out for lunch and met them, and they were fantastic guys. I think they wanted perhaps a bit of reassurance that I wasn't going to start, taking their stuff into 8-bit game soundtracks or something like that. But we reassured them that
or add any kind of Celtic pan pipes
Celtic pan
in the back of their music.
And anyway, so we decided to go ahead. And this, Colin, and you being one of the prime movers in this, I have to say, is a fantastic piece of work. It's a large box set, very beautifully kind of presented. It's quite heavy. Will you talk us through, Colin, what actually is in this? And this is a result of a couple of years' work, really, isn't it?
It is. And actually the design, I should say, this clown image, it's possibly an image.
They borrowed your image from
they did, yeah. They it's a bunch of clowns, yeah. The image, I think, comes from a German cabaret poster that Charles O'Connor found in the early 70s. Yeah. And he created a poster with that 5 clowns design for a Dublin Stadium concert they did. So that was his suggestion as a kind of an overall design aesthetic. And Charles O'Connor was very much involved in okaying that, and the rest of the band said, look, as long as Charles is involved in okaying what Mark does.
But the band have all been deeply involved in, and it's the ultimate, I think it's the ultimate fan collection for Horslips, isn't it, really?
Yes.
Can we have a look at what's inside? Let's.
It would certainly be an unusual unboxing video if we did it. So I'd actually kept this intact with the wrapper on for a couple of weeks, hoping that we could do this with cutting the wrapper off, but you were busy and I was busy, so I had a sneak look. But anyway,
more than you can chew is what the entire thing is.
You actually haven't seen this. This is for you.
No, this is absolutely the first time, and this is the result. I mean, Colin, we worked at this
For a long time.
For a long, long time, and there were lots of, and again with the band's collaboration, we would send things off, and maybe some comments would come back. You know, oh,
who are you? How did you get this number?
That would be every time. No, but and we'll come back with suggestions or things that you know, like have you considered this way, approach this, and sometimes we'd have to talk about, look, this piece of material was really, really degraded. And we had to, are you okay that we've actually forensically removed some of the kind of the noises of it and things like that? So everything went through the band, and it was their final say on it, which was great. It was really, really reassuring, and that's exactly what we wanted.
Indeed. I mean, I think the moment when you had used Peter Jackson's technology and you demixed out all of the banjo, I think that was possibly a step too far.
Right, very good. So what's in this?
So the first things we see are a set of 5 photographs taken in 1976 with some camera trickery of each individual member, and these were used.
Let's hold these up. I'll hold these up as you're doing them.
Yeah,
so.
These were used on the back of the Book of Invasions album in 1976, and
are these all personally signed?
They are all personally signed. Yeah.
Very nice.
So.
Yeah. So there you go.
Barry,
so that's the idea of the venue. That's the Barry's one.
Charles,
you know.
Jim, Eamon, Johnny.
Amazing. So those are lovely. That's right off the top of the box set.
Yeah.
What else?
If people wanted to frame those are a set of genuine signatures of very, 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 very nice photographs from that period. This is the origin of the design aesthetic used throughout. This is a reproduction of that poster
from
the stadium, 1975, I think.
Right. Okay.
5 clowns.
Fantastic.
And
it's really it's a packed kind of a box, isn't it?
Indeed. Here we have an envelope of Horslips Funky Fun Club.
So I take it this is the original fan club, and friends of mine, including the guy who built this studio, John O'Neill.
Yeah.
He was a member of the Funky Fun Club, and I remember we tried to get him to find his fan letters, but he found us old records. Actually, some of them I think that we did use in remastering. I think maybe some. But anyway, we
didn't. But eventually, but we had some vinyl on standby. But we'll cut. There's one bit of vinyl we did use in the process. We'll come to that.
Yeah.
But these are a handful of original fan letters, or letters to fans from Samantha, the fictional secretary of the Horslips.
So which one of the Horslips best fitted the moniker Samantha?
I think it was Eamon and Barry. I mean, Samantha, I think, went on to work behind the scenes at I'm sorry.
That's right.
I haven't a clue. Or
it might have been.
It may have been the same for Samantha. So yeah, a fan had kept these, and they include actually a really nice sort of biographical details about the members from 1973. Or thereabouts, I think. But anyway,
so there would be people getting this box set and their actual fan, their fan letters from the guys. And Samantha always wrote back. Is that the case?
Yeah, apparently.
But in those days, I think it took quite a while, didn't it, with postage and all the rest? It's not like
I think these days it probably would still take quite a while and cost far too much. The days before the internet.
So that's quite nice. There, Horslips Funky Fun Club.
Yeah, a glimpse of an artifact from the days of yore. Yeah. But funny, the business about your builder being a die-hard fan and everything, and I just thought it tremendous. If we had have used anything from him, we would have been using something credited to the man who built the studio for the man who rebuilt the man who built America.
Very good. Listen, if you can sit back so you're on mic as well, so. So like this
working with unprofessionals, Cormac, honestly.
So this book, then, what's in this book? This looks like a weighty.
Yeah.
Encyclopedia Horslips.
Yeah, we have the clown wearing earphones, Horslips on the Record, written by Mark Cunningham, who superbly designed the set. He also wrote all the content in this book, and he had previously written the band's biography. So Mark did everything he could not to reuse material from that biography, but to take a different approach, to use new images, to license in new images, and to get new interviews from all the members. And it's focused on their recordings this time, as opposed to being a full biography of, their background and their live gigs and so forth.
If you can hold that up a bit.
I certainly can.
But it's a weighty tome. How many pages?
It is a weighty tome. When you say, can you hold that up? It's actually...
Too heavy to hold?
No, just... my fingers may Wave of Flood. There we go.
All
there
right,
you
okay,
are.
there I am.
Late Night Tony, who did a lot of the transferring of reels and cassettes.
Yes. And the other person who was
Myself
involved
with a
in
couple of dodgy geezers.
Yes, the other person who was involved very heavily in this project at the studio here is actually directing this today. So Richard's not on camera,
But we can hear him. Richard, can you say hello?
Hello, everyone.
There you go.
There you go. He exists. Unlike Samantha, Richard exists. So, yeah. Here we go.
Great, a brilliant book. Okay, well, look, that
Superb.
looks like a lot of information in there about the actual recordings and about how they came
Every
about.
album, Mark has done superbly. Every album is detailed.
Beautiful photographs.
Photographs from the period. Superb quality paper.
Will people
it's
have
a really
seen all these
beautiful art.
photographs? Or
No, there's lots that are previously unseen,
Okay.
or they're photographs from photo sessions that they might have seen one or two from, but not the ones we've used, and plenty that have been licensed in. There's a couple in particular licensed in from
Well, don't show them the whole book
the
because they won't buy
late Michael
They won't buy
Putland.
it.
If I'm not finding the ones I was hoping to show you, but we'll zip on towards the end, because at the end there is, I think, I'm right in saying there is a piece about your good self.
Oh, right, okay. Oh,
So
very nice.
apparently this is quite unusual in box set books. Apparently it's quite unusual to give so much detail about the bloke who's done the
The
mastering.
bloke who's down in the entertainment mines. That's
Yeah.
usually where I.
So
where
I just find it interesting. I interviewed you for this section. I've done a couple of pages myself on the process of curating a set like this, and I thought it'd be interesting for people to learn a little about what you do to enhance the audio.
Yeah, I mean, it was an unusual project because we had stuff coming from pristine studio albums, remastered studio albums, right to people who were basically just mixes off a sound desk and bits were missing. We had to use every technique that we've had to any technique that we've developed to work with mastering and remastering over the last 20 years. It all got used in this project because stuff came from everywhere. We even had speeded up material, slowed down material, bits.
I remember that.
Kind
Yeah, I remember we were wrestling over one track in particular, and you just couldn't make it work. Something in your head was telling you this isn't right, and I think you said to me, "Is this track really good enough?" And the penny dropped that it was actually running slow, and somehow you'd done so much other under the bonnet stuff you hadn't realised it was slightly too slow.
So unlike a lot of the other master stuff, this was very much a collaborative project. It would go. We had a sort of a 3-line web. It would go from me first to Richard, and we would work on it together here. Then we would send it to you, and whenever we were all sure that we had passed the muster, we'd done something, or left it in a pristine state or whatever, we would then pass it on to the band. Well, I remember we could maybe hear back in a couple of days or a couple of weeks or whatever, and we would maybe have to go back. So it really was a team effort to make
really
sure
was.
that we represented the band in as best way as possible.
It's an important point because online so far, the reaction's been almost universally positive, and the one or two slight quibbles that some people have
Barry
had.
and Jim just are terrible online.
Yeah, well, those guys never happy. No, the one or two slight quibbles we've had are people saying, well, I wish it could have been this, or why was that done, or whatever. I think whatever people's quibbles may be, even if it's something as simple as, why wasn't the complete original artwork used for the new Digipack gatefolds that Mark has created, even things like that, people have to understand that the band have been very much involved in this. This is the band choosing to present their music in this format, in this way,
and
at this time.
It is kind of the last word in from the Horslips, isn't it? They say this.
Well, you say that, but there will actually be a live at the BBC
There
box
you
set.
go.
Possibly you may not be involved in that one, but yeah, essentially this is the core legacy of Horslips. There's something like 250 previously unreleased tracks, a huge amount of stuff. The core canon.
I
plus
particularly
live
enjoyed. I have to say, from working, I really enjoyed the rehearsal sessions. There are a lot of rehearsal sessions in this where you hear the songs stripped back. Actually, some of them you hear them in slightly different ways, whatever.
Yeah.
And also you get to hear the band as well, the harmony singing, which I really picked up on more than I think they think of themselves as very good musicians or competent musicians. They're actually very modest, and songwriters, right? I think all that. But I really loved listening to some of the harmony singing that went on in the band, and I think that was. I can tell you from having worked in bands over the years on television, throughout my career, that we backed hundreds of artists in different circumstances, that if you don't have a great singer in song music, you don't really have a band sound. So for me, one of the strengths of the Horslips thing is, and I think it came true in rehearsals as well, was the strength of their singing. And actually their voices are very different, but like all great groups, sometimes you put great, very different voices together, and it just kind of makes this sound that becomes the band's identity, which can never be really recreated in any other way. And that, for me, was something that I loved hearing, the raw kind of workings out of songs and things.
I thought it was fascinating as well. And I know Barry, it's his favourite material. You know, there's probably about 2.5 discs worth of rehearsal material. And I expected, with the rehearsal tapes that Jim dug up, I expected it to be, you know, fairly workmanlike runnings through of riffs and until somebody had an idea. But it seems that Horslips, when they got together in the country every year in a cottage to work on material for their next album, they wouldn't press record on their cassette machine until they had an idea that they wanted to put down as an aid memoir. And that idea might be...
So that's why the rehearsal tapes are good.
Yeah, that's why they're good.
We're coming in at the kind of the stage where they're ready to present it to maybe the record producer at the time, or
at least keep a record for themselves, so they could go back and say, yeah, that 3-part harmony thing we worked out there, let's use that. And I agree with you. The harmonies are amazing, and I think I say this in the my own words in the book somewhere, that to me it reminded me of the Beatles. And I
said that at the time as well.
You know, you say this and people will go pshaw, nonsense.
But it's the melding of those voices that make that sound.
Yes,
that
it's
is
an
Horslips.
ensemble that's bigger than the sum of its parts.
Yeah.
And with Horslips, they actually had 4 singers. Eamon was the only one who never sang on record. Jim dropped out of singing about the middle 70s, but certainly Charles, Johnny and Barry, the 3 of them shared vocals quite a lot, probably about a third each on stage by the end of the 70s. And you know, when everybody was singing in those harmonies, they were worked out parts, and they were bigger than, you know, I think you'd probably only say that of all of them, Johnny was a world-class individual vocalist, but Barry and Charles and Jim were all vocalists of great character.
Yeah, I think that's more important.
And that's you know, that's something that really comes across when you're listening in detail to this sort of stuff.
I really did enjoy meeting them on the occasions that we did, and one of the things that was of great interest to me was to see how much of it was written in the studio. And I was surprised to find out that they said, no, we couldn't afford to do that. Yeah. So those sessions, those rehearsal sessions, whatever, everything, they had the whole lot ready to go whenever they went in the studio. So the studio was kind of an act of recording. But they did use, later on, I think they did use, you know, with the Man Who Built America, you could definitely hear the studio being used as an instrument in some of these tracks,
yeah,
you know, as a kind of part.
Definitely. Yeah. Certainly towards the end of the 70s, you can hear the producer, you know, they've chosen to use a particular producer, and it's a strange time, the end of the 70s for Horslips. You can hear it in the difference between The Man Who Built America and Aliens and the final studio album, Short Stories Told Tales. You can hear that they're clearly aiming their sound at America. They're listening to Boston and Foreigner and those big AOR things.
FM
yeah,
radio
it's designed
at that point,
for FM radio. It's big and shiny and bombastic, but yet there's still layers of counter melodies and traditional motifs, and it's really clever and well structured. But then by Short Stories Told Tales, it's a smaller sound. It's grittier. It's more looking, or at least influenced by, British New Wave. You know, the likes of, I don't know, the Jam or the Motors or I don't know, the Joe Jackson Band or Dr. Feelgood, whatever. That kind of gritty, choppy, scratchy kind of British New Wave sound. So they were pulled between 2 directions. I think creatively they were more in with the British New Wave camp, and sales-wise, you know, the end of the 70s saw them trying to make that breakthrough.
And I know that if Jim or Barry says, they'd be sitting going, what's he going on about?
To be honest, if Jim or Barry were sitting here and I was talking about anything, they'd be saying, what's he going on about?
Well, look,
why are we here?
On that note, let's have a look at the actual audio that comes out. So all we've seen is that these are all the extras, the books.
One more book, which I'll very quickly show you. This is a lyricography.
Right. Okay.
And, this is something that Mark Cunningham was thinking of doing before he was approached to work on the book anyway. To work on the box anyway. But he got to do it for this set. So it's a beautiful softback book. Again, really quality paper with some original lyric reproductions, an introduction from Mark, and lyrics to all the songs. And he's not just kind of gone on lyric.com. He's
yeah.
he has liaised with all the band members,
so that we're not getting the whole,
we're not
excuse
getting
me
some
while I
Chinese
kiss this
whispered,
guy.
we're not. We're not getting
Yeah.
some Chinese whispered version or some Baudelaire version.
Unfortunate cup of chai.
Exactly. So all the lyrics to all the previously known and published songs, and at the back lyrics to some of the unpublished songs.
Horslips in
that
their
are
own words.
their debut here.
There we go.
Yeah.
Of the songs. So then that's all these really, like, a lot of really nice stuff. But now if we can, if I just hold this up before you take it out. So then it's presented. So there's 4 kind of compartments, literally full of CDs here,
Indeed.
Whatever. And Colin, would you like to select a
Beautiful
CD?
artifacts. Yes,
Yeah.
I will pull the ribbon and select this tranche of CDs. This is a gesture that will be familiar to you, because anytime I owe you a wad of money, I tend to get it out of the bank and present it
I know.
like that.
A fivers always look better whenever they're fanned out,
It
like,
may
to
only
make it
be
look
5
like something.
fivers, but yeah. So these are
Well,
these are
Those were valuable until about 30 seconds ago.
yeah.
So
So these are the CDs that the canonical albums. The original artwork has been maintained, and Mark has then across all of them created gatefolds, and I think only one of the original albums had a gatefold, the live one, the double,
Right.
and the first album had a very complicated booklet. That complicated booklet is not recreated here, but
So the original artwork's on the front, and then inside Mark has redesigned.
yes, but he's used the palette of that album, as you can see.
Yes.
He's kind of continued the design ethic.
Well, it would be fair to say Mark is an obsessive about this kind of stuff. I mean, he's done it in
Yeah.
such great detail.
And a lot of it's really nice. I mean, sometimes, there, for example, there's a ticket to an event associated with the launch of this album, and elsewhere there's, reproductions of singles that are collected on this Tracks from the Vaults from the mid-70s. And here's one of the previously unreleased collections. So what he's done there, he's got Ephemera from 1977.
So hold that up at your face so you can see that. There we go.
So again, there's a live photo of the band from 77. This continues Jim's uncollected works.
Oh yes, I actually really, really enjoyed this, working on this. Jim is a very successful kind of TV composer as well, and he's created a lot of great music for television. And it's funny, it's the one album that I didn't try to, collection of things. I didn't try to make everything seem as if it should sit on the, together.
Yes.
Because Jim did so many TV themes for different shows from different decades and things like that it would have been ridiculous to try and make them all sound as if they were recorded in the same studio at the same time. So that was the one record we took. But it's great if you want to find out what else Jim has done.
Yeah.
I think you'll find
In the 30 years
it's a
since
lot.
Horslips, yes.
It's a lot.
And that is, actually, it raises a good point, because even though I, quote, curating is the word used for this kind of thing, even though I curated the, as it were, the previously unreleased live albums and so forth in this set, insofar as I looked at what was available, I managed to boil it down into a series of discs that were allowed within the parameters of this set, and then presented them to the chaps, and then there was a discussion. So insofar as that happened, I was in charge of the selection process, as it were, or at least presenting a selection that was then discussed. With Jim's CD, and also with the mid-80s uncollected recordings by Eamon and Johnny, both the host and a projected Johnny Fiend solo album that Eamon was involved in producing, and some other bits of soundtrack work. Those people themselves curated their discs. So this is completely Jim Lockhart's selection. And the Eamon and Johnny disc, which I think is one of the highlights of the set, is very much their selection.
The one we had trouble getting.
Yes.
The one we had trouble getting was Barry's solo record.
Yeah.
Do you remember that was and we had trouble getting a pristine copy. Barry in the depths of
his rambling mansion.
Of his rambling mansion couldn't find it.
He has the master somewhere, but he can't find them.
I'd like him up. I said, I tell you what, why don't you contact the other members of the band, because they will all have unplayed versions of it, or versions that have only been spun
and
once.
Sure enough, one of them did.
That's bands for you, you know.
Yeah.
So anyway, so we did get. I think that's where we got it. Did we get it from Jim?
I think we had a couple of copies, pristine copies actually. A fan, now let me see if I can remember the name. I think it's John Ray in Edinburgh. Had a pristine copy. My apologies if I've got that wrong, but a fan in Edinburgh, certainly known to Barry, had he had two copies, one unplayed and one obviously that he played. So there you go. That's
he must have liked one better.
But that's fans for you. That is diehard fans for you. You know. So I think Jim had an unplayed copy as well. So between those, we mastered from vinyl, and I think while we're on that, the only other album that we mastered from vinyl. And it was a choice to do so. We had a digital master for it, which was the Belfast Gigs, the final live album from 1980. And we had a digital master, but there was very, very little headroom in it, and it had been the original mix was very trebly.
The trend at the time was towards real overcompression again, probably for radio, but you don't need to do that for radio because radio does it anyway or whatever. And so I think that the vinyl copy was much more open and representative of the power of their
we have
live
eBay
sound.
to thank for that. I bought a mint copy on eBay, and Richard who had purchased unbeknown to members of his family an exceptionally expensive record deck.
Richard
was able to transfer,
which he's just now sold to me. I haven't paid him for it yet, and bought one that dwarfs the price of that one.
Wow, wow! Whatever you're paying him, it's too much.
But anyway, so
anyway, to finish that anecdote, yes, we used vinyl for that one album because we find that you find that there was actually more headroom. Taking it as a really high quality transfer from the original vinyl, and I think you really wrestled with that, and it was almost like you found a secret drawer eventually that if you removed a couple of frequencies, suddenly a huge amount of new audio information appeared, which is
kind of
a revelation.
I think it's called the Haas effect, where if you have frequencies that mask other frequencies, so bass frequency can mask, and there were 2 points in the record, and whenever we actually found those frequencies, it actually released the entire power of the recording, and the clarity of the mix became exceptional. That was one of the kind of creative uses of EQ that we had to do. And whenever I'm remastering stuff, my whole approach is do as little as is necessary to do. Trying to get out of the way of the record and and that was one of the cases where we actually had to take away stuff to reveal more.
Yeah, people often say to me, "What is it that Cormac does?" And I say, "It's very little, but it's all necessary." No, I think that's being a bit unfair. So I know there's some audio, some of the non-professional sources where you really worked very hard to enhance what we had that was of historical value, and in other cases, like you say, you do a small but necessary amount that enriches what's already there. With the Belfast Gigs, ironically, I think we can say that album now sounds without a doubt better than it did in 1980 because effectively you've added audio information. To that
I think we've cleared up the mix and things like that, and it was incredibly enjoyable, and it was a long job.
That one,
and we revisit, and if you remember, at one point I got an acute case of Horslips poisoning. I could listen to no more Horslips for a while. Where we'd gone through so many stuff. I just needed to take a break from it for a while. But that suited the project. While you were uncovering yet more.
Yes, I was uncovering yet more gems from the bottom of the sea, as you would say. Actually, speaking of the Belfast Gigs, this was at the bottom of the pile. I lifted out of the box. It's this is one of the highlights of the set. We've called it The Last Time. Because at the end of the gig, the band play a version of the Rolling Stones, The Last Time. And this is actually a soundboard copy made by Steve Airedale, their sound man at the time, who went on to have a very distinguished career in working with U2 and huge stadium bands and so on. And it's a recording of their very last show at the Ulster Hall in October 1980. And
Is this the one where the fiddle went into the audience?
allegedly so, which is why we have a fiddle on the back of the. So yes, there's the fiddle in the moon.
Yeah.
So we have the whole of that gig across one disc and 15 minutes of the next, and then what I did, because it was quite a number of soundboard recordings from previous ballroom gigs around Ireland in 1980. I took. There was, I think, 6 songs that they were playing in their 1980 repertoire that they didn't happen to play on the final gig. So I liaised with the band, sent them various copies of each of these other songs, various versions from ballroom gigs, and between them they picked the best versions. And I think actually the best version of "I'll Be Waiting," which is their equivalent of "Freebird," which is an 8 or 9 minute song with a huge guitar solo at the end. They didn't do a lot of jamming. They were quite well arranged, but this was one number, and "Shaking All Over" I think would be another, where they allowed themselves to stretch out. So we had one really great recording of "I'll Be Waiting," but it was missing the first line. So I don't know if you remember this, but we took the first line from one of the other recordings we had, and
there was sometimes whenever things were there were points where like maybe the sound engineer or the recording engineer at a live concert maybe had hit a button and the record would disappear for a 3 or 4 bars, or maybe the vocal would disappear as the vocal was turned off, things like that. And
the first 2 songs on this final concert, that happened. Whatever the Steve Airedale or his associate was doing at the desk at the time, it was quite strange. There would be a few bars where
could have been a dodgy channel on the desk or something.
You would hear part of the band, but the guitar had dropped out or a voice had dropped out, and you were able, with a bit of your wizardry, to patch that in from elsewhere in the song, or on a couple of occasions from other recordings from 1980. So. But that was, we didn't have that too much of that surgery to do.
Very little of that, but we were Columbo for the Horslips at that point. Trying to
one more thing. I just felt with that one gig, it was important to present pretty much the whole thing as a document.
Well, it's a very important concert for a lot of people. And, people I mentioned to anybody who was at that concert felt that they were on a special occasion.
Yeah.
But anyway, so those are just a sample of the CDs, or there are all of these CDs here as well. So it's really a fantastic box set, and I hope that with that might be of interest to fans. And how many copies?
I believe there's 1,750 copies,
and that's the whole thing. Is it's only going to have that many? That's it.
It really is that. Like, that's the nature of the. I mean, we all know that anybody in the music game knows that the market for physical music is diminished these days. It's challenged. So if you're a heritage act with a cache of previously unreleased bits and pieces, and a canon of work that could be refreshed and represented and so on, that's one of the areas in the reissue music game that is quite healthy at the moment, which is in a sense, it's more is more. Now, some people say, well, why can't these things be released separately? Well, because it's arguably there's 1 or 2 things in this that could have been released separately, like the last time, like the final gig. But by and large, this kind of thing, for a band to make any kind of money at all, it has to be a business model like this, where there's a limited there's an artifact. It's quite a high ticket price.
And you won't be able to get this again.
No, you won't. It won't be streaming. It won't be online. It's tremendously good value pro rata at whatever it is, 270 quid or whatever it is, somewhere around there.
But it's a real collector's item.
For the amount of music that's in this. And we haven't even mentioned the 4.5 hours of film material.
Right, okay. That's right. Lots of.
I mean, this is, that in itself, people need to understand that actually licensing that material in was a huge job from various providers.
I remember all of the conversations,
and actually quite pricey as well. So that, even though we could.
There has been a cost to collecting everything.
One could hold up the 2 DVDs and they look like small artifacts, but they contain a wealth of the visual record of a band's history over 50 years, frankly, and there's a tremendous, if you like, unseen it's like an iceberg. Holding up a DVD is the merest tip of the iceberg.
Yeah.
The value is what's on it.
Right.
So it's a tremendous artifact. It won't be around forever. If people are fans,
Well, I think
they should probably pick it up.
Yeah, of one of Ireland's most essential bands. So there you go.
Indeed.
Horslips, More Than You Can Chew, and the box set is on sale now. Where can people buy that, Colin?
Yeah, I think there's 2 or 3. Again, part of the business model is there are limited outlets, so that the return is maximised for the band members. And those outlets in Ireland, it's CelticNote.ie, which is run by their publisher and manager, a record label publishing operation, CelticNote.ie. And I think the rest of the world, the prime outlet is BurningShed.com.
Yeah.
There may be 1 or 2 other outlets. JPC.de, I think, is the one in Germany that's being used. Anyway, there's a handful of outlets, but they should all be more or less the same price.
Yeah, well, hopefully we'll put links to it at the bottom of this little video. A very enjoyable project, Colin. It was a fantastic meeting, and
would you do it again? Would you do another huge box set if somebody came? If I came to you and said, Cormac, I've got a 30-disc box set. Are you in?
Do you mean there's more stuff of the Horslips that you haven't found?
No. No, but it's a serious question, Cormac, because you are...
you can't ask me that on camera, because I can't tell you what I really think. No, it was a brilliant project. It took way longer than we imagined, but actually in this instance, it was definitely worth the effort. A band who are special to so many people. And in development of rock music in Ireland, it was an honour to be involved in it. So, yes, it would depend on the band, Colin, is my answer.
Fair enough.
And on that note, we'll leave it there.
Okay.